Hey guys, welcome back. I got a few requests asking if I could do a specific video for painting my eye, so I decided to do something a little bit different and do a tutorial on how I paint my dragon eyes, so stay tuned. Firstly, I'm using acrylic paints for painting my eyes, and I'm using a cool yellow from Chromacryl, and I'm also using a sunset gold from Lumiere by Jacquard, and I'm just going in with that cool yellow as the base colour, as I wanted a light eye for this particular dragon, because it's going to be regal. So what you want to do is you don't want too much paint on your brush to begin with, and I sort of like to dab the paint in the middle and then work it towards the edges of the eye, so that way you're not spewing any paint over onto any paint work that you've done previously or just spilling over to the edge if you're using a darker paint. So just a little bit and then push it towards the edges, and then next you can just load up the paint in the middle of the eye, and hopefully you've got a great coverage. So I don't like to use big brushes for this either. I like to use a smaller brush, that way I have better control of what I put on the eye. So now I'm just going in with that sunset gold, and I'm just putting a nice light coat of it over the top of that cool yellow paint, and just because I wanted to give it a little bit of sheen towards the eyes and just to have it a bit more depth. So once that's dry, I'm going to be adding in some just some details in the eye. So these are just little brown patches. I've used a watered down brown acrylic paint, and I'm just drawing in little details and stuff. You can draw it in however you like, however you want your eye to look. I wanted it to look a bit patchy. And I'm also just drawing in some streaks of different colours into the eyes just to give it some depth as well, using a darker yellow and even the lighter yellow and some browns as well. So a lot of back and forth with the streaks, but it's worth it in the end. So once that's dry, I'm going to go in again with some of that lighter yellow paint because I want it to have a bit of a highlight around where the pupil is going to go, and then I'm going to add an extra highlight once the pupil is down, just so it highlights it properly. So when you're drawing in the pupil, you want to make sure you know where you want it to be, and I usually start off very small to begin with and then build upon that. So there's no point going in with a huge pupil and then not liking the way it looks because it's off center or it's too big or it's just a bit wonky. So definitely just start off small and take your time, there's no rush, otherwise you'll regret it. Now I like to use a sort of a dry brush for this rather than having a lot of paint on the brush, just because I like my pupils to be a bit feathered rather than a stark straight line. I think it gives it a bit more character, and it sort of blends in a bit nicer and just looks a little bit more realistic. So again, for this dragon one, I'm doing a classic slit eye pupil rather than a round one, which I normally do on some of my other art dolls. So moving on to the second eyeball, and this is a little bit more tricky because you have to make it symmetrical. So just keep looking back and forth between the other pupil that you've painted to make sure that it is symmetrical, it's the same size and the same placement, otherwise you'll end up looking a bit weird. Alright, and once you're happy with that, let it dry, and then we can come in and add some highlights. So I mixed up just a really light yellow highlight with that same cool yellow and the white paint because I wanted to bring out the pupil and give it a sort of ring around the pupil as well. So just slowly dabbing in, nothing over the top, and you can see the difference that it does on the eye that's not painted. So I think it just brings it out a bit more and gives it a bit more character. And the same deal on the other eye, just dab it on, and you can go as far as you want or as small as you want. Okay, now I'm just going to be adding a little bit more of a darker tone to the corners of the eyeballs. I just like the way eyes look when it's darker on the outside and is light on the inside, so I'm just adding a tiny bit of brown that's been watered down quite a lot in the corners of the eyeballs, just to bring out that yellow a bit more. And you can sort of get the idea of how that depth has changed it a little bit more. So it has, again, a lot more depth to it. Okay, once that's dry, I use just a clear nail varnish to actually varnish my eyes and make it shiny. But you can use a variety of things like this Elmer's glue. This works really well as well. You just apply it in a blob and it dries and looks great. You can also use a clear resin. I prefer not to use this because resin can yellow, so I don't use it myself. You can also use a UV curing resin. You just use it the same as you do any old gel polish. Put it on there and then you pop it under a UV lamp. You can also use this Tamiya clear varnish. It's an enamel paint, so it's not water-based, and that will work as well. So if you want me to do a comparison video on different varnishes, let me know in the comments down below. Now I prefer to use that clear nail polish. I think it works really well if you put a couple of layers on. So you don't really have to do anything special, just wait for the paint to dry before you're putting any varnishes on, otherwise you'll just end up blending into a mess. So just a little tip, if you're putting on a lot of nail polish, you want to keep the piece moving so it doesn't pull in the edges of the eyeballs, otherwise it just ends up losing that varnish. Alright guys, that's it for me today. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. If you have any requests, leave it in the comments down below. You can also check me out on Instagram and Facebook at Creatures of Nat, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!